Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of My Life with Robert Burns. Jim Thompson and Douglas Mackenzie here again to talk to another of our cronies from around the Burns world. Hi, Jim. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Douglas. The election's on and Mrs. Thompson's working for a change. So you and Bob and the old kitty this week.
Very good. Well, folks, tonight our guest is the immediate past president of the Robert Burns Association of North America and is the sole nominee to be junior vice president of the Burns Federation. So cronies everywhere, please welcome Paul Kennedy.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Hi, Paul. How are you doing? I suppose before we get started, I should wish you a happy Independence Day.
Well, thank you very much. I was up late last night because we did our fireworks last night. But thank you.
So what is that? What your celebration consists of? Is it mainly fireworks?
Well, it's usually sporting events and what have you, barbecue, and then at night we finish with some music and some fireworks. And that's pretty much our celebration.
Very good. So was that late night?
Well, we can't have fireworks till after 9, so it does tend to go to 10:30 or so. So it does get late, especially for me.
Okay, well, we'll be gentle with you if you were up late. The first question, Paul, is always, please, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I was born into a military family. My father was a retired Army colonel, and I was born in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where I spent my first 9 weeks. From there, we traveled to Virginia for a couple of weeks, and then my dad was stationed in Germany. So I spent 3 years in Germany. Interestingly enough, when I went to Germany, I actually took the SS United States. That was one of the fastest ships in the ocean at the time, a beautiful luxury liner, and it now sits rotting in the river right across between Philadelphia and New Jersey. Every time I pass it, it brings back memories of traveling to Germany as a kid. But so after 3 years in Germany, my family, my dad, brother and sister, and my mom came back to the U.S., where he was stationed at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. So from Oklahoma to Germany to Virginia to Kansas. From there, we went to Hawaii, back to New Jersey after 3 years. So I've been to school in a number of places. I tell people that I've been to grade school, high school, and college in Hawaii, but they're only at 3-year stints at a time. So I didn't really spend a lot of time. But from Hawaii, we came back. And when my father got out of the military in 1971, I went in the military just shortly thereafter. So I really never had a break from the military. He did 30 years, I did 30 years. And I retired in 2004 from active duty, but stayed working for the government for the next 17 years.
So what branch of the military were you involved with?
I was Army. I started out as an enlisted soldier, working as an infantryman, and then I went to become a warrant officer pilot. So I was a medevac pilot in Alaska for a couple of years, and then I went to the Officer Commissioning Source, OCS, and became a commissioned officer. So I retired as a major out of the Army. But I had a great career. I tell people I had 3 careers: being enlisted, warrant officer, and finally a commissioned officer. But I couldn't have asked for a better life. I was very fortunate. Even though I was engaged in some of our conflicts, I was never actually subjected to the most difficult part of that. Always worked either at desk or flying somewhere behind the lines. So I was very fortunate in 30 years, especially with the number of engagements we've had in that time.
Yeah.
But when I got out, I have 5 children, 4 of which signed up right shortly after 9/11. And when I was stationed in Baghdad for 2 years, my daughter and 2 of my boys went through there as part of their military assignments. And I was able to see all of them. When I got the opportunity to go to Iraq, I was no longer in uniform. I was working for the federal government. And I told my wife, says, "What do you think about me going to Iraq for 2 years?" And of course she said, "Yes, go keep an eye on the kids." So that's what I did.
Yeah. And what was that role? with the federal government?
I worked for the Special Inspector General for Iraq Reconstruction.
Mhm.
And then 2 years after that, I went back and did it again for the Afghanistan reconstruction. So I actually spent 2 years in Iraq and 2 years in Afghanistan. So I've really enjoyed what I've done. I'm fully retired now, but sometimes I feel like I'm busier now than I was when I was working. And I'm sure that most people who are retired will say something similar. But I
And
really
do
enjoy
your family
retired life.
still? Sorry, carry on.
No, I said, but I'm enjoying a retired life, so it's wonderful.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if your family's still living in the same area, or do you have to travel to visit them?
Fortunately, my daughter is here for 2 weeks, and she's from Idaho, which is clear across the U.S. I
Mhm.
have another son in Virginia, which is only a few hour drive from here, but three of my boys are within 15, 20 minutes. So that's very fortunate. I get to see them frequently.
Yeah, very good.
Yep.
And
So with my
and now you're retired. What are your interests? What's taken up your time?
well, this Robert Burns, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I think very fortunately, has taken up a lot of my time. We have an unusual club here in New Jersey. It's the South Jersey Celtic Society. It began as a annual Burns supper that quickly we could not accommodate so many people that wanted to be part of it, but we're not really Burnsians at the time. So we expanded it to include anybody of a Celtic background or just like Celtic culture, music, dance, poetry, what have you. So the Burns Suppers are still our premier annual event, but we also support other Celtic clubs. We have a St. Patrick's Day parade here that we support. We give quite a bit of money to pipers, pipe clubs, dance clubs. If you're familiar with the Rosenbach Museum, they have one of the largest collections of original Robert Burns material outside of Scotland. We give them a donation or two every year to support that Burns collection. So we do keep pretty busy.
So how did you get involved in the Celtic stuff? How did that come about?
Let's see. I've always been of course, the Kennedy name was a little deceiving. It's actually an Irish Kennedy. But I'll tell you about my poetry background in a little while. But as for that, my son and I, my oldest son and I, play Irish music at a lot of different festivals. And that's really how we got interested in that. And then when we started the Burns Club here, which myself, my good friend, and my son were really we put it together out of nothing because none of us had ever been to a Burns supper before. But we put that on. We provided all the music. We learned a number of Burns songs and a few of his poems. And no one around here had ever been, well, with the exception of two or three expats from Scotland that happened to be living here, they showed up. But no one else was really familiar with Burns suppers at all. So that was
Yeah,
it.
the Scots will show up anywhere there's a party.
I found that out. But we have a large Irish community in the area. Philadelphia has one of the, I think it's the second largest St. Patrick's Day parade in the U.S. And so we have a lot of even our pipe bands have mostly a Scottish, or rather an Irish influence. They're either Ancient Order of Hibernians, which is an Irish group that have those clubs. We also have police that have the Emerald Society, which is an Irish. So there's a lot of Irish here as well. So we decided that we would just expand it to incorporate anybody that at one time spoke Gaelic. So it goes back, and now we encompass all those nations.
Excellent. So have you played music all your days, or was that a new thing as well when you got involved in the Celtic stuff?
Well, when I started to learn piano when I was very young, and then I learned violin for a while. I ended up teaching my son to play violin, the very basics. He quickly outgrew me in that arena. But I've always played guitar, growing as a teenager especially, but not so much the Irish music. That didn't come about until probably my 20s or 30s. And really not regularly until my son joined me with the fiddle. And we started to play around this area at certain Celtic events and what have you. So we still do that. We have a good time. We always have other people join us. So it's called the Kennedys and Friends, usually when we play.
Very good. Have you got any recordings?
No, none official. We've been threatening to put a recording together for several years now, but our studio, the one we plan on using, has kind of fallen by the wayside. So we're looking for another one, but that'll happen soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, very good, very good. So that Irish connection, do you still get back to Ireland to visit relatives?
Not to visit relatives. I don't think I have any more that I could find or locate. My wife, who's a genealogist that's her big hobby, and she's very, very good at it. She can get my mother's side back to the 1650s in Canada, because that was a French-Canadian connection. But she can't get my father back to the boat he arrived, or my grandfather back to the boat he arrived on. So it's very difficult, and I don't know why, but of course Kennedy is not a it's not a uncommon name. It's very common, and there's so many coming over that's where her issue is. But we have no family that I'm aware of, and I'm sure they're there. But when I go back to Ireland, which is not all that frequently, we just go back for sightseeing and what have you.
Excellent. Well, while we're talking about the Kennedys, that might give us the link into talking about Burns, because Jim does as one of his hobbies show tours around the Kennedy country, which has got a Burns connection. Do you want to comment on that, Jim?
Yes, the Kennedy clan, who are obviously coming here because they're Scots Kennedys, as opposed to Irish. There's basically plane loads of them come every year, and obviously the Kennedy home here is at Glen Castle in Carrick, and when they come here, I usually get contacted with people who are coming and ask them to. I take them around Meg's Ride in Tam O'Shanter, basically, because it still exists. A lot of the stuff that's mentioned in Meg's Ride is still there, so I take them around and show them. And the last one, believe it or not, I did last year. It was an American who was doing the recitation, and it's one of the best recitations of instead of me reciting it, which gets kind of boring, I've got to be honest and say, instead of me doing that, the American did it, and he was absolutely terrific. And he got to the end at the Brigadoon, and we're up there, and I started him off and saying, right, from this line, and he took us through about the last four or five verses of the poem, and it was absolutely electric. We had tourists listening to him, and it was in this American accent, and it didn't detract from it at all. It was wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and it's quite common here for them to come over the Kennedy clan. I'm not sure of the association with the Irish, though, to be honest.
The Clan Kennedy, I was honored to be honored by them with the Order of the Dolphin and the Elsa Award, which is that big rock out there. But I know that Primrose Kennedy was one of the 9 original Burns Club, Burns Supper attendees. And so I'm very familiar with the Scottish Kennedys. And the more I do research on both sides of the ocean there, the Irish and the Scottish Kennedys, I can't help but think they're somehow related, even though they claim there's no connection. I mean, Joe Kennedy was one of the biggest rum runners of his day. And of course, Killeen Castle, through those caves down there, they used to run liquor out of there too, if I'm not mistaken. So if nothing else, both Kennedys had that liquor running connection.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the villages near Glen Castle, it was common for every receptacle in the house to be full of illegal liquor. And in fact, the kids even had brandy in their porridge in the morning before they went to school and stuff like that. And I mean, and it's just all Olympics at the time, in the 17th and 18th centuries. Wonderful. do you go over here very much? Obviously, we've spoken
Well,
before.
I'll be there in a couple of months for the RBWF AGM. And I think next year, a good musician friend of mine is putting together a tour that several of our club will be going over there as well. We don't know exactly where we're going, but I think it's going to have a Burns slant. So I'm hoping that we'll see some of those areas. I have not been to Killeen Castle, by the way, or even Ayr for that matter, but I do intend to get there soon.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm sure if when you come over, we can manage to organise that for you.
Oh, that'd be great.
yeah. I mean, I'll be at conference and as normal. And although I'm not staying this year, I'm just coming for the 2 days because I only live, literally 10 minutes away from the place. So and we can have a chat through that when that happens.
Yes.
It's nice to see you coming over again. Obviously,
Great.
you'll need to come over if you're going to get elected. Because I see you're the only person standing, which is, well, sometimes quite normal, but it's usually some kind of competition. But it'll be nice to see somebody from overseas again. I mean, Henry was the last one, and it's not something that happens that often. And I keep saying to people, it's the Robert Burns World Federation. It's not the Robert Burns Scottish Federation.
Yep.
You need people from all over the world. So how did you get involved with Burns? How did you get involved with Burns?
It's actually I came late to Burns. I've always loved poetry. My father was loved classical music and poetry both. He instilled both loves in me. As a matter of fact, the day I enlisted in the Army, I didn't tell him I was enlisting because I knew he wouldn't want me to go in. But when I came home and I said, Dad, I got to tell you something. So I told him, and he just sat there for a moment. He picked up a book of Rudyard Kipling, which was on the table, and he read to me Gunga Din. I'll never forget that. It's just, it's a great story. And of course, Rudyard Kipling has been a favorite of mine for years. Tommy and what have you, those soldier type stories, stories from the barracks. But I've always loved poetry in general, and especially war poetry, nature poetry, love poetry. And so that leads you right into Burns, patriotism, nature, and love. But I came to him relatively late, and I think it was because of the dialect. I have having difficulty, especially as a young man, trying to decipher some of that. Although so many of his poems are written in standard English too, of which they're all equally as beautiful. But there's something about his most famous poems that if you're not sure how it's pronounced or what it's saying, or if it's not performed well, sometimes you lose the gist. So it wasn't until I was in Belgium in, I guess, the late 1990s, and the British military contingent there. I was on a military installation where they had 21 nations. So every Monday night, all 21 nations would show up in their uniforms after work at the officers club, and we had 36 different dartboards around the arena. So there were 36 games going at any time. So you're throwing darts against your dad's former enemy, whether it be Russia was there, of course, Poland was there wanting to become a member for peace. Russia was there an observer. They were there as partners of peace. But somewhere along the line, the British contingent said, hey, you need to come to our Burns supper. And I had never heard of a Burns supper back then. So I had something, I was either away or something I couldn't attend. But a friend of mine who did attend said, oh, Paul, you got to go. They're great. So first I went and read a little bit more about Robert Burns. And I said, well, if I ever get another chance, I'm not going to miss it. 5 or 6 years go by and I'm back in New Jersey, and I cornered a friend of mine, and I said, this is 2005, I guess, somewhere around there. And I cornered a very, very dear friend of mine who just recently passed away, Tom MacGyver. As a matter of fact, we started a scholarship in his name for Alzheimer's and dementia. That's the way he passed. And we've been giving donations to RBWF in his name for their program that's also on that. But getting back to the story, the three of us, my son, Tom MacGyver, and myself started a Burns supper when none of us had ever been to one before. So I got a little book on how to do it. And we talked our local eatery into putting one on. We provided the entertainment, and we had a great time. And now it's a sellout performance every year. We're coming up on our 20th. January will be our 20th. And it gets bigger every single year. And I told you we had a few people from either Scotland or of Scottish ancestry that said, yours are so much fun. They're usually very stuffy. Now, of course, we didn't know enough to make them stuffy. We figured if we had to keep people entertained, we had to make them fun. So we had Scottish country dancing. We had all our music was live because we learned a bunch of Scottish songs. Well, we learned all Burns songs, and we had a couple of we got some haggis from a local vendor who has since been out of business, but we found another source. But we put together a really great Burns supper, and people now, of course, we've all been to any number of them. We still think we put on one of the best ones anywhere in the area. So very, very proud of that.
So what Burns tunes did you start with then? What songs did you start with?
Well, Red Red Rose, of course, can't do a Burns supper without somebody reciting or singing that one. Another favorite, this is another thing, is all of our original members, the three I was telling you about, we're all home brewers. We brew our own beer. My son, my friend Tom, and myself. So Willie brewed a Peckham malt. So we always start by telling them, now all our beer is given to us for free for our suppers from our local brewery. But back then we made our own for the first couple of years, and we actually had a contest, and we called it the William Nickel Brewing Excellence Award. And it's a large, we use an oak paddle, which is a mash paddle, and it's engraved, it's beautifully engraved, and now it hangs up in the brewery, our local brewery. But we would give that to William Nickel Excellence Award, Brewing Excellence Award. But we also, of course, sang that song. Let's see. Craigieburn Wood, of course, was one that we did. We thought that was a fun one to do. And a few others, but those are really the Scots Wha Hae, of course. A lot of military things that are associated with the military, whether it be Scots Wha Hae or just For All That is another one that we couldn't get away with. But I'm not sure, you gentlemen, I think are probably around my age. If you remember the group Traffic from many years ago, they did John Barleycorn.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
we did that too. We actually did a pretty good job of that. And that's, of course, it's not exactly Burns, but it's very close, and it certainly tells the same story.
Yeah. Yeah, remember Traffic well. Yeah.
Yep. There's a hole in my shoe. You're right about the age. Yeah, I was when that was released. I think I must have been about 12. I think 10 or 12, something around that.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Long time. So I take it the Burns Supper's now progressed to obviously 20 years. It's an annual event, and is it growing?
Well, we have to cut it off at 120. We usually can squeeze a few more in there, but that's the size of the venue. That's all we can handle. So we don't have a problem selling tickets. But we'd love to get a bigger venue, but it's just not possible. And I think it loses something when you start getting up around 150 or so. It's no longer the intimate event that you were hoping to have.
And do you have all the usual stuff, immortal memories and recitations of poems and toast to the lassies or whatever?
I'm looking around for a medal. We do. When we started this, we had a couple of medals struck, and one of them we give to anybody who gives our immortal memory. So, of course, all of our founders have given the immortal memory at least once. It's a beautiful silver medal with Robert Burns on the front and our symbol on the back. But we make a big deal about the person we select to do our immortal memory. We also have, of course, the toast to the lasses and the response, which is always fun. Sometimes we'll get a couple, sometimes we'll get people that don't know each other, but we always have a nice time.
A couple's just very dangerous.
They can be. We found that out. A couple of years ago, we had one of the three owners of the brewery and his wife came and did the immortal memory. Now, they knew nothing about Robert Burns until they started attending our Burns suppers. But they said, I think we could do that. And I said, okay, we'll give it a shot. But we've been very fortunate. We've had some good luck with some our speakers.
And who does your recitations? Does it change every year?
Well, we put this book out on all the tables, and we leave an area throughout the night for people to if they want to give a shot at it. The number of people that have never recited poetry, let alone Burns, that would want to give it a shot is amazing sometimes. So we get 2 or 3 people that have never done it that want to come up and we'll help them pick songs or poems. And the winter has passed. It's pretty easy to do because there's no dialect involved. A friend of mine did to George Washington on his birthday a couple of years back. He had a large military contingent there. So they may give it a shot, and we always love to have these new people that didn't even know who Burns was until that night. And then they become some of them go on to become real fans.
Yeah, that's
Very good. And you said that your annual supper that's the only event you have. You don't do other events throughout the year?
We do as a matter of fact, this will be our 2nd annual Burns Halloween coming up in October. And we do that at it's a Lyceum. The building itself was a grant from King George III to New Jersey. And it's still up there, and it used to be a museum, or it used to be a library for a while, and now it's back to what its original intent was. It's a natural museum and lyceum. So we do it there. It's a very nice little venue. We have a live recitation of Tam O'Shanter, of course. This year, we're thinking about incorporating some of the things from the poem Halloween, these dating, like bobbing for apples, what have you. We're thinking about incorporating a couple of those. We're very fortunate with the age of our people too. Many of them are younger, and want to keep it that way. So, but then we also mix it up a little bit with some other Halloween events, Samhain, customs from Scotland and Ireland and the other places. But that's one event. We do the St. Patrick's Day Parade. We make a little bit of money on that, selling beer. And then we also support the New Jersey Renaissance Fair, and we sell all the liquor for that event. So this year we grossed about 130,000 US.
Wow.
And we'll probably net right around 100,000, and that's what we use to give away to our charities and what have you. So we're able to support quite a few groups and peoples and events and what have you. So.
And what brought you to your involvement with the Burns Federation?
Well, it started up, I guess, regularly enough. When we started our club, we thought that was as far as it went. We had a Burns club here and a Burns supper. And then I found out that there was a Robert Burns Association of North America. So I wrote them and, we can join as a club. So I went ahead and joined as a club as well. And then within probably 3 or 4 months, I get an email from someone at Urbana asking me if we could assist with their upcoming AGM in Philadelphia. And we're the closest club to Philadelphia. And I said, absolutely. What a great way to get on board. So we did that. And that was where I met so many great people, was at the Philadelphia AGM. I think that was 6 or 7 years ago. I've drawn a blank now of what year it was. But so we came with our Burns band, myself, my son, and 2 of my very, very good friends. One plays accordion, the other one plays everything. He plays bass and guitar and what have you. But so we played all the music for that night, except for 1 or 2 guests who wanted to come up and do a song, and we backed them so that they could sing a song or 2. And it was a great time. And I met so many great people then that was my first introduction to Urbana. And then the next logical step, of course, was, there's a bigger organization or one that's more encompassing. So I guess it was Henry that told me about RBWF. And so I did the same thing. I joined and registered our club. And the rest is history. We've been very close and love it. But I think the thing that is most amazing to me is the people I've met through this organization. I mean, I've been in other organizations unrelated to Burns or poetry, my entire life, but the people are just so friendly, so just an incredible group of people that, you know, their sole connection is Robert Burns.
Yeah. Have you ever taken part in the Rabana quiz as a
I
group?
actually led it this year, but last year I was because I'd seen some of the questions, I sat out, but did not know most of them. But I was surprised at how well I did. I probably, if I was keeping track, I probably would have gotten third or fourth, but of course I didn't enter. And this year I couldn't because I was the quiz master. But I will in the future, trust me.
It's good. I just think, unfortunately, I've never managed Rabana myself through ill health. I was supposed to go twice and then couldn't go. But they're a lovely bunch of people, I've got to say. Lovely. And the Canadians are not on the same planet as the rest of us, of course.
Yeah.
They're just not different.
Paul, Jim got you to tell us about your favourite songs. What about poems? Are there any favourites there?
Well, of course, Tam O'Shanter is one of my all-time favorites. To a Mouse, I think, was probably my first Burns poem that I was familiar with, and that I, you know, actually said, "Oh, I can understand this," and I got it, and the message was incredible. And I think that's the first poem that said, you know, this guy really had something on the ball. It was a lot deeper than just the poem, obviously. And so there's a lot of poems that I really enjoy, but Tam O'Shanter being probably near the top, if not the
And
top.
do you do any readings yourself?
I read Tam O'Shanter last year for our Burns Halloween to slides. I had a bunch of slides in the background, so the people's attention was on the slides. But I did read it. My son recites it. He does very, very well. He does it from memory, but I'm not there yet.
Very good. I mean, what we're angling towards is whether you can either give us a song or give us some recitation so we can include it in this podcast. But
Well,
I
I'd
don't know
love to
whether
give-
you want to do that.
Yeah, I'll be happy to give you a song if it. I don't know how the sound is on the other side, but I can give it a shot.
Well,
The,
what we find is if you try to play an instrument to accompany yourself, Zoom doesn't like it. But if you're able to do it unaccompanied, that's perfect. If you prefer to be accompanied, we could get you just to send us a short video after this, and we'll edit it in.
Well, I'll tell you what. I will send you a clip, but I'll also try and do one that's unaccompanied here. Which one were we talking about? Just bear with me 1 second. Oh, the Willie
Only brewed a Peckham Malt.
Willie brewed a Peckham malt. Now just don't pick on my accent too badly, and I think we'll be fine.
Oh,
It's not as noticeable.
That would be great. We would join in the chorus.
Perfect.
but I'm afraid Zoom doesn't like that. We'd all be singing it different.
Yeah, we'd be at different. You're
times.
right. I understand.
It certainly wouldn't like me singing it anyway. Can you hold a tune if you put it in my hand?
Yeah.
And in your own time, Paul.
Okay, I'll do all this 4 short verses, and you can just sing in your head for the refrains. How's that? Oh, let's see. Oh, Willie brewed a Peckham malt, and Robin Allen came to see 3 blither hearts that lee lang night you would not find in Christendie. We are nae fou, we're nae that fou, but just a drappie in our he. The cock may craw, the day may daw, and I will taste the barley bree. Here are we met, 3 merry boys, I trow are we, and mony a night we've merry been, and mony may we hope to be. We are nae fou, we're nae that fou, but just a drappie in our ee. The cock may crawl, the day may daw, and I will taste the barley brie. It is the moon, I ken her horn, she's blinking in the lift, say he. She shines sae bright to wile us hame, but by my sooth we'll wait a wee. We are nae fou, we're nae that fou, but just a drappie in our he. The cock may craw, the day may daw, and I will taste the barley brie. Wha first shall rise to gang awa, a cockled coward lone is he. Wha first beside his chair shall fa, he is the king amang us three. We are nae fou, we're nae that fou, but just a drappie in our he. The cock may craw, the day may daw, and I will taste the barley brie.
Oh, well done.
Well done. Well done. Excellent.
Great.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
think that's the first. I can't think of anyone else that has sung that on these podcasts. I think I maybe had attempted it myself when they persuaded me to do one of the podcasts, but I think I only did a verse. So
Yeah.
well done getting through the whole of it, and your pronunciations were great.
Good. I told you we give that song, we give an award. Now we give an award to one of our breweries that bring the beer. And one of course has gotten the award every single year since we started doing that. But it's not because they give us beer for free. It's because we have such a great working relationship with them and the other brewery. So now we just give them both the same award in the form of plaques, but they each have this paddle, the mash paddle, hanging over their bar. And what caught my attention when I first saw the poem, I had never heard it before, and I saw Willie brewed a peck of malt. So I went and looked up what a peck was, and it's about 14 to 16 pounds of grain, which is exactly what a 5-gallon batch of beer uses, give or take. And so I said, oh, this guy was a home brewer, which I guess he really was. So that we decided that's what we're going to do, and now it's become our tradition every single year to sing that song and award that prize.
I think that's a great tradition. I think it's a fantastic innovation. One of the things you mentioned earlier on that we just touched on was the award you got from the Kennedy Society. I'd already picked up on that on Facebook, and what I was interested in was the Dolphin Award. Why is it called the Dolphin Award?
The Kennedy crest is a dolphin. La
Right.
fin de, La fin de, the end of the, remember the end is what it is. And it's a dolphin. So that's where the Dolphin Award comes from.
Mhm.
La Visa Fin is the motto.
Right. That explains it. And you also get the Ailsa Craig Award. Is that
Correct.
so? Do you want to tell us a bit about what these were about?
Well, I mean, I understand why they gave them to me. I had to go online and find out more about Ailsa Craig. You know, that's a little island, rock island out there in the thing. And I guess was it owned by the Kennedys at one time? Is it?
It would have been the Kennedy, it was within the Kennedy clan area, and it would have been their fault. It's known here as Paddy's milestone, you know, the way to Ireland. And you can see it as you're approaching there from the north in a decent day anyway, you can see it, and and I mean it's very famous because of the fact that they use the stone for curling stones. In fact, I think there's places that just round the corner from you, Douglas. I think.
Yeah, I can. If I go over to the back window here, I can see the curling stone factory. The curling stones that they produce are used for all the Olympic Games and World Championships. So it's Ailsa Craig granite that's used for these curling stones.
I actually read that as well when I read on Ailsa Craig, and I was surprised that you can't find granite elsewhere in the world that works as well. But I guess here, just a mile from my home, we have a creek. It's called the Rancocas Creek, and if you go to any professional baseball games in the US, all of the baseballs are covered in this mud. And they get the mud right from the Rancocas Creek. And no one knows exactly where it is because there's only one family that does this. And if somehow or other that mud makes the baseball perfect for hitting. And so every single professional baseball is packed in this mud. And then of course it's rubbed in and rubbed in. So you get just a light tan on the when you pull it out of the box. But so I said, you can't find mud elsewhere in the world that will do this? But apparently not. And I guess it's the same with the Cullen Stones.
Yeah, well, the island itself, I mean, having been on it many, many years ago now when I was a young cop on an emergency exercise, the minute you arrive, you realise that the inhabitants are not exactly keeping the place clean, because it's just obviously seagulls, and it's almost impossible to walk on it. I don't know how you get out there and do any work. It really is, because and if you slip, you're covered. You know, you're just covered in it.
Yeah.
But
Anyway, we drifted to talk about Ailsa Craig there rather than talk about why you were given these awards.
Well, the awards are given for a member of the Kennedy clan that excels in some area of expertise, or not necessarily expertise, but does some great feat or whatever. And I guess they recognized that they had not had a Kennedy as a member of as a president of Urbana before, and they thought that was pretty noteworthy.
Very good.
are you looking forward to the next 3 years then?
I really am, and for a number of reasons. One of them, you mentioned before, it is the World Federation, not the Scottish Federation. I think I will be the first American, if I'm not mistaken. But I certainly want to use that time to, promote the Robert Burns World Federation as well as Urbana throughout the U.S. And try and bring more attention to it. So that's my big goal.
Yeah, it'd certainly be worthwhile. And the fear I've always had is it becomes colloquial. It needs to stay exactly what it is, the World Federation, and it's good that we're getting people, not just people from Scotland. I mean, the current president was London Burns Club, so it's nice to see the mix, and because sometimes we go too long with the Scottish Trail, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And it's good to see a fresh face. And conference is good fun apart from anything else.
Yeah. I think I mentioned that I was in Afghanistan for 2 years, and while I was there, I was able to meet the British ambassador to Iraq or Afghanistan. And I asked him if he was having a Burns supper. And so he immediately turned to his number 2 and says, "Are we having a Burns supper?" And of course, his number 2 said, "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir." So we'll make sure Mr. Kennedy's invited. But at that supper, I sang Scots Wha Hae, and this is when they were just going through the vote for independence, I guess. So that would have been 2013 or so, somewhere around then. Yeah. So about half the room, when I sang it, or I should say about a third of the room stood up and with us. And so we're singing, the other third sat down, and there was another third there that had no idea. They were either guests of the ambassador from other embassies and what have you. But there was a Russian ambassador there, and he recited For All That in Russian, and then again in English, in the standard Scottish dialect as was written, with no notes or anything. Just incredible. But I asked him afterwards, I said, how are you familiar with Burns? And he goes, "Oh, Russians love 3 things: whiskey, women, and Burns." And he was big on the Burns. He said Burns is a hero, national hero in Russia. And that's the first I'd ever heard of that. Of course, now I've learned that he was a man for all men, basically, and freedom was a big part of that. So
yeah, the Russians were the first to use Burns on a postage stamp.
Yeah.
And the St. Petersburg organization is very much part of the Federation. We have a competition for them every year for the children. And it's really worthwhile because the stuff they produce is absolutely terrific. And unfortunately, the issue with Ukraine, because we still have a competition with the Ukraine children every year as well, and I think this latest war has it's dampened our interaction with them, obviously, because of that.
Yep.
And I think that the St. Petersburg group aren't able to venture there as they used to do every year.
Well, I was aware of that, and I hope that that repairs itself here soon, because, like I said, I think Burns is above all that, and I certainly I think the Burns clubs involved over there are that way as well. But I think it's their governments that are kind of, putting the kibosh on it. So
Yeah, if it wasn't for governments, the world would be a happier place.
Says a man on the day of the general election.
Well, I think that just proves it. So, moving away from Burns a little bit, what about other interests? Any sporting interests, or I mean, obviously you've done a lot of traveling in your life.
I have been very fortunate to have seen a lot of the world through my military and exploits and what have you. When I was younger, I was when I was in Hawaii, I swam competitively for a while, which I really enjoyed doing that, just for 3 years. I got into the martial arts for many, many years. I actually, from time to time, still go to an old man's group. They call it as Wing Chun, which was a style of kung fu that was developed by a female, a Buddhist nun. So for us old guys, it doesn't take everything out of you. But so that keeps me healthy, and I like to go to the gym from time to time.
Yep. So when you were doing your swimming, was it in swimming pools or open water?
I'm sorry?
When you were swimming, was it within swimming pools or in open water?
No, we had an Olympic-sized pool on the military base I was stationed on. My dad was stationed on. It was Schofield Barracks, which is, if you ever saw the movie Tora, 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 that's one of the barracks that they flew over. There, right in the center of the island. But they had a great big pool that we had swimming every morning at 6 a.m. I'll never forget that. And just because it was Hawaii, the water was not warm at 6 a.m.
And which stroke did you specialize in?
The breaststroke and the backstroke.
Yeah.
I could never do butterfly for whatever reason. Could never do butterfly. Freestyle, everybody swam, so I was good at it, but not competitive.
Yeah. And the problem with I find with butterfly is that you get exhausted after about 2 or 3 strokes.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
And when it comes to traveling, have you any favorite places in the world?
Well, I think one of my favorite places to have lived was Alaska. It truly is the license plate says the last frontier, and it really is. It's incredible. It took us 18 days to drive from Georgia to Fairbanks, Alaska, with 5 kids, my wife, and a sheepdog, an old English sheepdog. So
Wow.
18 days doing that. But what a beautiful country, or beautiful state it is, I should say. But other than that, I mean, Hawaii is very beautiful, but it gets very small after 3 years. And there's, no matter where you travel in the U.S., it seems to change from almost by state line to different scenery, and it's just a beautiful place. And of course, Europe, I can't say enough great about that. The forests of Germany are beautiful. Ireland and Scotland are both, rustic and beautiful to travel around. So I look forward to doing much more traveling.
Well, you're going to get the opportunity if you're when you eventually become world president.
Yeah, I guess I will. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other ambitions in the Burns world? Anything that you want to achieve, even with your within Jersey?
Well, you mentioned the competition that you have in Russia. Of course, I sit on the RBWF board right now as the U.S. director, and I hear about the competitions in Scotland, and I would really love to do something like that here. So approaching a couple of the local schools and seeing if they have, because my group can give a scholarship. And I would love to have a competition of some of these poems, at the school, at the grade school level, and try and get them interested. Also pipe band. We have a lot of pipers around here, so I'd love to have a piping competition that specializes in, some of the same things that they're. Matter of fact, I'd like to use the same curriculum they're using in Scotland for this kind of thing. But I don't think we do nearly enough on this side of the ocean to, promote Burns at the early levels. A lot of people get involved later on, as I did, but I'd really love to see it taught more in school, or at least as a competition that these kids can learn about it and do something with it.
And are many of the schools interested in Burns? Does anyone know about Burns? I mean, I know that, way back in the 1800s that Burns was probably the favorite poet in the States. But
Absolutely.
But do people are people as aware of Burns as they were then?
No, I don't think so at all. You're probably familiar that I think it was Rockefeller, I'm not sure, one of our early millionaires in this country went and put a bust of Robert Burns in so many libraries across the US. He was a big fan. I hope I have his name right. It's Rockefeller or Carnegie or one of those people.
That'd be Carnegie.
But yeah, it might be Carnegie. So since then, I think it's kind of tapered off quite a bit at the early ages. Some older folks may remember seeing them in the schools, but I mean, I have one behind me which I had made. The guy made 250 of them, and I love it. But you just don't see Burns statues or Burns memorabilia nearly as often as you used to, I think. So I would like to see that improve. We are thinking about, when I say we, I'm thinking about my South Jersey Celtic Society now. We are looking into buying a park bench with Robert Burns sitting on one side with a pen in hand and writing, and leave the other side of the park bench, someone could sit down next to him. But and we looked into having that priced, and we might do something like that up at our Lyceum, which I told you about earlier, which used to be a museum.
Yeah.
And now is a nice little gathering place. But other than that, you don't see a lot.
No, I appreciate that, and I was surprised. My daughter worked in the States for about 20 years in Wisconsin, and I was surprised at how often I came across a Burns statue when we did a bit of traveling. I remember going for a walk in Milwaukee and coming across Burns Park and not really expecting it to be the Robert Burns, but the statue there in the middle of Milwaukee, and in various places around Boston was another one where we came across a statue, and it just surprised me the extent to which Burns was known, and certainly in these days. So it's good to see that there are so many Burns organizations within North America.
Yeah, Detroit, Michigan also has a beautiful Burns statue, which I just came across recently. So
the one in Central Park's quite nice as well, I've got to say.
Yeah.
God worth saying. And of course they've recreated the Alloway Cottage.
in Atlanta, yep.
Atlanta, which is a great thing.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to give the immortal memory there last year, I believe, or the year before. And yeah, what a beautiful place that is.
Yeah. So, and there's lots of American, connections with Burns. I mean, Abraham Lincoln, for example, was a huge Burns fan, and in fact, he kept the Bible and at one of the Edinburgh editions in his bedside every night. So, and there's lots of it in America, and it's a great thing to see. But as you say, it needs to come to a modern generation rather than just languish in the past.
Right. I was
It sounds as though Paul's doing a lot of good work with the Celtic Society, and the fact that young people are getting involved. I mean, that's tremendous, making that link, even making the link with the Irish music, because these are things which young people can really buy into.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're very fortunate to have a large group of people around here that are interested in those kinds of cultural events, and that they get their foot in the door, and then we spring burns on them, and of course they want to come. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I think we're kind of coming to the end of our time. So if you don't mind, Paul, if you can give us a wee clip that you can send on to us, we can tag it on to the end of this. Yeah. But in the meantime, I just want to say thanks very much for spending time with us and telling us about your life with Robert Burns. Thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. That was very enjoyable for me, and thanks for asking.
The Golden Locks of Anna. This is for Helen Ann Park, who was the niece of the woman who ran the Globe at the time, Mrs. Hillslip. And I believe their relationship resulted in another illegitimate child of Robert's, known as Elizabeth. Yestreen I had a pint of wine, a place where body song nigh. Yestreen lay on this breast of mine, the golden locks of Hannah. The hungry Jew in wilderness, rejoicing o'er his manna, was nothing to my heidi bliss that upon the lips of Anna. Ye monarchs, take the east and west, frae Indus to Savannah. Be within my straining grasp, the melting form of Anna. There I'll despise imperial charms and Empress or Sultana, while dying raptures in her arms I give and take with Anna. While thou flaunting God a day, oh while thou pale Diana, ilk star gave my twinkling ray when I'm to meet my Anna. Come in thy raven plumage night, sun, moon, and stars withdrawn up, and bring an angel pen to write my transports with my Hannah. The Kirk and State may join and tell, due to sick things I'm manna. The Kirk and State may gae to hell, and I shall gae to Anna. She is the sunshine of me, to live but her I canna. Had I on earth but wishes three, the first should be